Hello and welcome to another DC Corner. I'm Ed.
I'm Will.
And we're going to do something a little different. Instead of going through a whole bunch of comics this week,
We're going through three.
just three.
In particular, Supergirl, Wonder Woman, and Superman Wonder Woman.
Now, all three have new creative teams that debuted last Wednesday. And it gives us a chance to look at these new jumping on points through fresh eyes. As you know, I've been reading comics most of my life.
And I've kept up through the cartoons, the movies, the video games, but I have been living vicariously through my dad as he reads the comics and tells me, what goes on. I know generalities, but I by no means have been reading every issue. Now, a warning here, spoiler wave. We're going to be talking about very heavy spoilers with these comics. So if you are averse to these spoilers, move on, please.
And that's a little different than we usually do. We usually keep it to light spoilers, but since we're looking at these things
in more depth,
it makes sense that we'll talk a little bit more about them. Now, we're going to start with Superman Wonder Woman, which up to now has been written by Charles Soule. This was a somewhat unlikely pairing, although in past continuities they had briefly dated. This is a full-fledged, long-term romantic relationship. It was really handled well by Charles Soule, a meeting of equals, and doing exceptionally well. He's moving on to getting ready for an exclusive Marvel contract. Peter J. Tomasi, who's a good writer, has taken over. And he's sort of, well, what do you think first?
Well, the cover, it feels unfinished. It's not bad. It just feels like some details were missing unintentionally, as if the deadline was coming and the cover was the last thing to be drawn. Speaking of the art, welcome John Barrowman as Superman as they fight against the Ice Warriors, and John Jones said that Mars has been desolate.
It really does look like John Barrowman, and since he's been Captain Jack Sparrow, it makes sense they'd be fighting.
Oh, the Ice Warriors, but hey, it's not just John Barrowman. It's John Barrowman if you put him in the Uncanny Valley. A lot of panels here suffer from a very common problem. Two of them in particular. One, dead eyes. When they're not these single line little things, they tend to be doll's eyes, and they don't tend to be looking at anything in particular, and it's just creepy. The second thing is that the lips tend to bleed into the teeth, which creates this weird darkness effect that makes it look as if they have no lips.
I'm going to show you a picture that sort of skips ahead a little bit. We'll come back to it. But this is Diana looking like... Yeah. But before we get to that, there is a little bit of pretentiousness going on.
Well, before even that, there's a weird argument. The argument of Superman building a wall. Diana points out, hey, walls might not work against winged enemies, and then they spend the next 2 pages standing around talking about why they shouldn't be standing around because people are dying.
So it makes sense to stand around and talk about why you're standing around talking to her. Yeah.
Yeah, but then we come back to the present day where we get a typewriter, but not just any typewriter.
Oh, no.
Ernest Hemingway's typewriter.
There you go.
It was a present from Bruce. And as you know, as the most down-to-earth hero there has ever been, I must use a typewriter. What do you use to type things down? A laptop? Plebeian.
I don't even mind the typewriter, but why did they have to go over the top and make it Ernest Hemingway's typewriter? Now, we get in here, and this is one little problem I have with the art that I don't think you are worried so much about.
Well, it's just that I feel that...
Well, it's about Superman's uniform. Let me tell you what the deal is. In the New 52, they've made a big deal about Superman's uniform being bio-keyed to his DNA, and that if someone else was wearing the uniform, it would look completely different, and... when he's not having to be Superman, the entire uniform sort of disappears magically into the shield itself. So, while in past continuities, he might have worn his uniform with the shirt over it, and you have the big pull over the shirt, show the shield. There's no reason for this, where he's typing and wearing his Superman uniform, full uniform, including the parts that go over the wrist and would show over outside of his sleeve. He's wearing the whole thing while he's typing.
Well, I don't feel so strongly about it. I mean, I can buy that he was so busy and in a rush that he'd forgotten, but my main problem is the Miranda Lawson from Mass Effect dress, and it's just that dresses do not work that way. The dress continues up behind the bust line, making the only explanation boob socks.
And I'll have to agree with you there.
Breasts do not work that way. Clothing does not work that way. This is 101 art stuff.
Right. Now, speaking of clothing, Superman has a new superpower.
Now, I don't have a problem with this. I love seeing powers used for mundane utility.
Super stain fighting.
I love mundane utility superpowers, but the problem I have, it's that Diana has never seen a stain in her life. Like, even if we don't have the togas anymore, like we've had in past comics and continuities and cartoons, like they've never had blood-stained armor. They've never had to, clean off a blade after plunging it within their enemy's chest. And I don't buy that Wonder Woman would be astonished by stain cleaning power.
Well, she's only been hanging out with Greek gods for how many ever years she's been doing it. So yeah, it doesn't make sense that she would suddenly be so impressed by that. Then
we have Blight from Batman Beyond.
Actually, of course, the Atomic Skull.
Ghost Rider.
It looks a little bit like him, I'll grant you that. But joined by Major Disaster. Now, these are not A-list villains, but they're good enough to bring in for a first issue when you're bringing a new creative team in.
And honestly, I have no complaints. This is actually the best drawn sequence of the entire comic. It feels like a lot of the effort went here, and it's competently choreographed. The dialogue isn't bad, and the art is...
It does a good job.
There's detail. There's no more dead eyes. And that's the thing. There's a saying in the entertainment industry that if you do things wrong, your audience will notice. But if you do things right, your audience will never notice. And that's the thing here. There's nothing to complain about. There's nothing majorly. There's no wow factor, but it's not bad.
And I think that's the thing here.
It's pretty good.
It is pretty good, and it's something I want to see the next issue.
And it's honestly what saves this issue, because if it had continued the way it had been, like with Clark, why are you typing this thing? We're supposed to go on a date like real people. Now let's fly through the air like real people. With that kind of weirdness, it really brought the rest of the issue down. And then at the end of the issue, we have
a new character, and we're not going to spoil who this character is, because frankly,
but aren't we having the spoiler wave?
Well, I don't even know who this character is. It's a new character, so we'll find out more about this person next issue, and I'm willing to give it another issue. I'm not giving up on it.
Personally, I feel like as a professional, these people should have done better. If this were like someone just breaking into the industry, if this were someone that's in the indie scene where there's not as much funding, and there's more deadlines to hit. If this was someone that is not in in a major company like DC, I would be a bit more forgiving. But the fact is that these people are professionals, and I expect better work. I don't expect the Mona Lisa. I don't expect the Sistine Chapel. But you know what? I expect at least a bit better. I expect those last pages, the entire comic, from cover to cover.
Now, to be fair on the artwork, and I'll say this again on another issue that we're going to talk about, when it's your first issue on a new title, sometimes it's tough to get into the swing of things. The other thing I would say is there are a lot of artists who are much better at action sequences than they are at showing emotion. And this may be one of those things. And I'm not excusing that. The really best artists I've seen, like Jamal Igle, when he was doing Supergirl, and he's got an all-ages book called Molly Danger. You get great action sequences, but man, do you get expression. It's really great.
But that's the thing that when you
A.V. Reader's real good at that.
But that's the thing. But when you have a still medium like comics, those expressions are very important. You can't
sure are.
You can't Matthew McConaughey your way through comics.
No, you can't. But we'll see what comes up next issue. Now, Wonder Woman in this book is portrayed differently, as it was before. With the Wonder Woman in Wonder Woman, it's portrayed differently.
Right, but not only from the previous arc, as I've heard, but with the comic that we've just gotten through talking about. Whereas in Superman and Wonder Woman, she goes through this, what are these human emotions? I do not know. And that's a trope I've gotten very, very tired of. when there are human characters or aliens that identify as human, or creatures
Amazons in this case.
But when there's creatures that identify as human, as like human, not just look human.
Right.
And then there are these aliens that are foreign to our special emotions and ways of life, and and they have to learn how to be human to truly grow, and it's condescending, and I'm tired of it. Stop it. But there's a strict dichotomy here in that in Wonder Woman, whereas the warrior part is exaggerated in Superman and Wonder Woman, it is on the back burners in this comic.
This is about as much warrior as you get. Now, this is a new team. It is a husband-wife team. Meredith and David Finch. Meredith is writing, David's penciling. And a lot of the artwork is good. There's a couple of things we'll talk about in just a minute on here. But
let's start at the beginning. We start with Hippolyta, who's made out of clay. And it is raining. And, of course, we get this 3 pages of water, we need it, but it's destructive, blah, blah, blah. So that's our sort of mediocre introduction.
And then to show the respect that we have for her as a person, as an individual, as an icon and a hero, we have
a gratuitous shower scene followed up by a gratuitous towel scene. How surprising. Look, it's not that you can't have sexy characters in comics. I know, I get it. But it's cheesecake. It doesn't serve the plot in any way. We don't learn anything about Diana other than that she showers and knows how to do that hair wrappy thing. But that's all. It just doesn't feel like it adds anything.
Now, when we go from here, we're going to a part of the Amazon culture that was not in before the New 52. It was a real bit of culture shock to anyone who was not familiar with the New 52.
You see, I'm familiar with 2 versions of Amazonia. The Justice League version from the DC universe, animated universe, where they were all toga wearing, and they tended to be competent warriors, but there wasn't really a lot of personality beyond we are soldiers, and the 2 main characters that we tended to get any characterization from were Hippolyta and Diana. And of course in the comics, where again the other Amazons are barely mentioned, and Hippolyta dies issue 1.
Now, of course, in this version of it, we find out that Wonder Woman was not made from clay, but was rather the illegitimate child of Zeus.
Sigh.
And that there actually have been boy children born to the Amazons, but that they were shuffled off into slavery. Now Diana wants to repatriate these young men into Themyscira, into Paradise Island.
And it's not a bad idea for a storyline. I'll give them that. But it's mishandled so badly. There's this... We know who the good guys and the bad guys are, because the good guys want to repatriate the men and be nice to them, which is reasonable, of course. But we know that the bad guys are bad, not just because, they like slavery, but because they look evil. They have withered skin and hair, and they have sinister robes. And look, we've already known that these are the bad guy from just the characterization of these people like slavery. That's bad! But we don't need the further condescending straw man of, the evil men, they're going to infiltrate us and poison us, and we will become human. I mean, we don't need the wicked queen from Snow White here to nail down how much the bad guys are.
Now, one other point that I'd hit on artwork here is the next scene we see the Justice League. That's sort of Lyle Lovett as Superman. And that looks like a 16-year-old Wonder Woman.
Now, look, the comparison aside that my dad just made, the thing is that it's not that anybody is drawn poorly. It's a well-drawn, splash page. That's the full page. The problem is that Wonder Woman and the entire rest of the room and its inhabitants look completely different. It's almost as if Wonder Woman has been inserted in a different comic.
It's like somebody's put a spotlight on just her, a little key light there.
Which makes sense because it's her comic, but there are so many ways you could have done so artistically without doing this style change.
Now, again, to be fair to the artist, this is one of the most difficult kind of things to draw for most artists, because you're generally copying the styles of other artists when you're doing the other characters, and that's usually because of editorial influence saying you needed to do it that way.
But I understand that.
But
I'm always... You gotta go one way or the other. if you're going to do it where we're going to do it in this style, it will never deviate from this style, and that's just the way it is. I get it. Cartoons do that, ever since the old Disney cartoons. But when you're going to change an artist, either change the style or don't. Go one way or the other. Your audience isn't going to revolt. Just choose something.
And we're finally starting to see some variation in the DC style. When the New 52 hit, it was like there was a house style of art. Just like there was a house style of stories, all grim and dark and somehow involving Batman, no matter what character it was. If they were still publishing Sugar and Spike, it would have been Sugar and Spike meet Batman.
The Brave and the Bold.
That's it. So if they were doing Jerry Lewis comics, it would have been Jerry Lewis meets Batman. At any rate.
Batman meets Batman.
There you go. I'm Batman. We cue to the regular disaster here. I know. Sorry. And of course, they're going to try to figure out what's going on. And the obvious idea is...
Well, the obvious idea is to, put your heads together. And they try to put their heads together. Cyborg's like, you guys got any ideas? And, maybe it's a sinkhole. No, it couldn't have been a sinkhole. They don't close up. But Wonder Woman has to take the time out to mourn the loss of lives. And look, I get it. It's a tragedy. It's bad. We need to sympathize.
But she's a warrior.
And it doesn't really fit the characterization of Diana, at least not of a warrior that would go after the bad guys and then mourn later.
That's the point.
She is a soldier. And the thing here is that, especially in regards to her previous arc and her writing in other comics, it's highly inconsistent, and I don't know what I am displeased with more. Robot Diana, who cannot comprehend these humans, or Diana that is so wrought with loss and emotion that she needs to pour the raw feeling of the situation into the moment, and it feels inappropriately placed.
Now, next we have a special superstar guest spot.
Swamp Thing with an inappropriately placed fight scene. Now, it's not that the fight scene itself is bad. It's competently drawn. The sequence is very nice. The conversation's good. But it's essentially, you're near the crime scene and you're a plant. So therefore, you must be the villain. And then they fight. But no, look, I'm Aquaman. And this is the Swamp Thing. We're okay. Nobody could be bothered to tell Wonder Woman that Swamp Thing existed, but the thing is that it's just out of place. And with the first couple of pages just commenting on water being destructive, you could have truncated that down to a page, and the Swamp Thing didn't need to be there, and so you could have saved, I'd say, about 5-6 pages by cutting those and adding in anything else. And that's the thing here. We get the scene where she's cuddling the teddy bear, and she's wondering how to move on, and Aquaman's we can't save everybody. But then we get to what I actually like. Next page.
Oh, okay, hold on.
What I actually like, and it's the true conflict, the core conflict of what I feel this arc to be. It's that Wonder Woman is being placed into several responsibilities at once. Responsibility as the god of war, responsibility as the temporary leader of Themyscira, as a Justice Leaguer, and but the thing is that with all these wasted pages, where she's talking about the waste of the pull of being a Justice Leaguer, the God of War and stuff. It's that it's all dumped into 3 or 4 paragraphs into one panel,
which could have been more of the story.
Right, but not only that, but it's characterization that you could have spread out over those pages instead of just dumping it. There's a very important rule in storytelling: show, don't tell, and that was a massive, giant dump of tell.
And it ends with, without spoiling the ending here, it's an ending that you could only guess if you've seen Wizard of Oz about a few thousand times.
It's like they don't have tarps and Themyscira.
Yeah, we'll just leave that for you. Now, all that said, I still like this better than I like the last run. And I know I'm sort of speaking heresy here because everybody loved Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang's work on there. I didn't really get into Game of Thrones God style. And it was something that I just didn't enjoy as much. I'm glad to see a different tone here. I hope that they'll sort of hit their stride a little bit better. First issues on a brand new series are often the kind that knock your socks off. First issues in the middle of a run sometimes can be a little clunky, and this was
very, very, very
clunky.
clunky. I am very disappointed in the writing, in the formatting, and I feel that honestly, this could have used a bit better in the. I'm going to blame the editing department on this one because it feels like there should have been a lot that was cut, and no one cut it. I'm not usually in defense of editors being necessary, but I feel like there could have been a better job editing here.
Now, again, I'll give it another shot. We'll see what happens next issue. But that brings us to the third of the 3 issues here.
Supergirl.
Where Supergirl goes to Hogwarts. Crucible.
Yeah.
Super school.
But first, she's a barista.
And a very bad barista because...
Well, she's crushing the equipment because she can't control her powers because of the Red Lantern encounter, where she was a Red Lantern for a while.
Or for some reason, that makes as much sense as anything.
And apparently, superpowers aren't just like a bicycle because, I mean, you'd think that she'd be able to control her powers because she controlled them well beforehand, and how come she can't do it now?
But that's not the silliest thing about her trying to be a barista. The
silliest thing was that she somehow doesn't get a cash register. Ignoring that she's from a highly futuristic society that uses crystals. These buttons, I'm assuming, are clearly marked, that have numbers that 0 through 9, or at least here is burger, here is pickle, here is cafe, mocha, double, half calf.
She can't handle it. Just can't handle it.
And then we get Michael McDonald. Superman.
Yeah, take a look at Superman in here.
And look, the beard isn't bad. I'm just teasing. But the thing is, Superman is a jerk in this issue.
Now, that's sort of interesting here because there are sites that are talking about how things have gone, even Golden and Silver Age.
Like Super Dickory.
Right, where he's been a jerk at different times. But in the New 52, he's mostly portrayed as being emotionally open and a really nice guy, except when he's meeting Kara. And for whatever reason, he's a real jerk to her.
Hey, Kara, I just came here to talk about how you're a danger to yourself and others.
That's basically it.
And of course, she reacts about how anybody would react by being told that. And of course, he is surprised
that she's standing up for herself. But that's not the main point of this story. The main point of the story is that she is being
watched by Jean Grey and Beast.
It does look a little bit like I got to show you this, guys, because
let me help you out here.
There we go. It looks a little bit like Beast right there, don't you think? At any rate, they've been looking at him and they're trying to decide if she's worthy, and the way they're going to decide that is by just pulling her straight into battle.
But not just pulling her straight up. They say, you have great power, but you must learn. By the way, even though that we know that you have great power, we still need to test you just to make sure.
Now, I want to tell you one thing I sort of liked in the art on this one.
Oh, I love this. You see, this is my childhood right here. One of my first video games was the Death and Return of Superman for the Super Nintendo. And one of my favorite characters was the Eradicator.
And it's sort of an Eradicator look, if you look at the visor especially.
Oh, yeah. And that just has me happy all over.
And I will tell you one thing I like about this. In the New 52, when they redesigned Supergirl's uniform, they got rid of the skirt. They made it sort of like a one-piece uniform, sort of like a leotard thing. And I'm not the biggest fan of it. I mean, I know it's intended to sort of show her off in a sexy light, which is sort of odd since she's a teenager, although she may be growing up more now. But this is a full-body uniform that actually is rather cool from any perspective you want to have.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. And it's sort of Tronish.
It is a little bit. Here's another view of it. This is actually pretty cool.
And honestly, this is one of the highlights of the issue for me. It's the art. The art is consistently good. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I expect. Very consistent expressions. The expressions don't wow me, but they're consistent and they're appropriate to the situation. The art is well handled and consistent.
Now the art is Manuela Lupacchino, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right because I like this artist. And I've liked her other work. This is really good.
Yeah, she's just made 2 fans right here.
Okay, anyhow, we found out that she's going through a number of tests, and she meets up with some famous characters who have been here before in the comics.
No,
Maxima, who is
Maxima,
and Captain Comet, who is a long-time character, and in the Future's End tie-ins has been sort of set up to be seen as Supergirl's someday love interest. Here they meet, they're meeting in battle. Here's the classic trope.
Of course, that may or may not happen because timey-wimey ball.
Exactly. But she's going through all sorts of trials and tribulations here. It's some well-done fight scenes.
But then it's just, they were just testing you and not going at full power. We were just making sure that you were ready to be trained, despite the fact that we basically abducted you to be here. And so now you need to be ready. And it's just, it felt really contradictory and forced.
So
and look, I know there wasn't any action in the scene beforehand, but the action here, while competent, it feels like they shoved the square peg into the round hole.
Still, I'll take this. I'd actually fallen away from the series around the end of Michael Allen Nelson's run. And I really wasn't really into the Red Lantern part of it. So I'm sort of coming back here. It does look hopeful. I really love the artwork. The story, was a little bit of a clunky start, but not a terribly clunky start.
It's got me.
And
it's not interested. Like if I had to choose between books right now, I might not be going further. But if I had $5 to waste, I would give the next issue a chance.
And there is a twist at the end of this one that.
But the problem here is the formatting of the page. This is the big downside of this book is that when you're reading the page like this, you don't usually have the luxury of looking at it one panel at a time through a zoomed in.
Right now, we're not going to show you the spoilery part of the page, but we're going to tell you you're seeing all but the super spoiler.
But the thing is that the super spoiler
is at the bottom of the page.
It's so large. It's so large that by the time that you are reading that, like you're halfway through reading the text of the thought squares. I guess they're not bubbles. The thought bricks of the character. You know who it is already, and so it's no longer a surprise. And it feels like it takes away from the shock when you're able to semi-spoil yourself like that.
Right.
And it takes away from the timing of the thing. I mean, I know it's not a video or an animation where you can have the timing of,
right.
The camera pans towards them.
But this is where you do a last splash page when you're going to have this. So that
right.
So
this is where this is why a lot of novelists and comic book writers, they will save the twist for, they will build up the twist at the end of the page, of the right page, and then you flip it over, and on that left page, oh my god, it's the huge surprise! But even if they don't do that, it's always at the bottom of the page, not at the top, and when it's at the bottom, it's at the last, in a novel, it's like the last couple of sentences, or something like that, or it's at a very small panel in the bottom right, or at the very, very bottom, covering the entire bottom of a comic.
Right.
And it feels like the formatting really did a disservice to the story here.
Now, all that said, still, there's
Supergirl is the best of these three, and if I were to give any of these comics a chance, it would be this one. Because it's a slow start, but it's enough of one where I would be interested in buying. But with Superman and Wonder Woman, it's written, when it's not on the action scenes, it's written very like Superman and Wonder Woman are very contrarian, and it feels clunky and contradictory. And in Wonder Woman, she's suffering from tell don't show. I mean, show don't. Yeah, from a
show don't tell.
Yeah, from show don't tell, where the book is telling us through Wonder Woman what her conflict is, how she feels, but they're not portraying it through the art, through some more subtle lines,
too much exposition.
Instead of spacing it all out, with the thing where I can't be here at this meeting for the Amazons. I got to do this. There's a disaster, but then there's you could show her conflicts of responsibility, as opposed to her just blurting it out.
Now, I would probably give all three another chance, but I agree that the strongest of the three is Supergirl. The least strong of the three at this point to me is Wonder Woman. But
Really?
Yeah, I want to give it
How
a
is it?
shot.
But I'm just saying, how is it weaker than Superman and Wonder Woman?
I don't know. I think I have a bias about Superman and Wonder Woman. You got to understand. Up to now, I had been giving up on Wonder Woman and really being big on Superman and Wonder Woman. So that may be just some of that bias from the prior runs coming in on here. At any rate, guys, hopefully giving you some fresh perspective on here. I will tell you from last week, one book that really was good was Batman Eternal. We'll save you having to listen to a whole review of it right here, but that series really rocks. We're going to tell you real quick some books that are coming up next week. Arkham Manor #2 comes out. That was really good with the first issue. Batman Eternal, Earth 2 World's End, Future's End.
Flash #36.
Oh, that'll be good, because what's happened now is that our regular Flash is in a time and place that he has no idea where he is, and he has no powers, while Future Barry, with all the powers, is in our present-day Central City. There's a brand new series,
Gotham by Midnight.
and it's going to...
Now, what's that about?
Okay, it stars Jim Corrigan, who is the Spectre. So you're going to see more of a supernatural element to this thing. Ray Fox is a really good writer, and Ben Templesmith is an amazing artist, and his art style is perfect.
What is his style?
It's a little bit creepy in some ways, but it's really...
Like, are we talking about like Junji Ito creepy, or Tim Burton creepy, or the Killing Joke creepy?
I'll show you some of the original issues of 10 Grand sometime, and you can see that.
Oh, no, I remember 10 Grand. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Very, very cool artwork, and I'm excited about that, even if it is the 59,432nd Bat-related title in the New 52. It looks like it's going to be...
From Batman Comics. They might as well rename it.
There you go. And, though, I'm an old fan of the Spectre from... When I was growing up, I was really big on the Justice League, Justice Society crossovers that happened every summer. And so I became a big fan of the Spectre back then. And at one point, I want to say in the late 60s or early 70s, they gave the Spectre his own series for a while. That
I remember you buying some issues from the Spectre when I was like 5 or 6.
There was a second series of his as well. And I love the Spectre as a character. They really have more teased us what the Spectre can be like in this New 52, so I'm really anxious to see what happens there.
And I just like seeing, A-, B-list characters getting some of the limelight. This is why, I want to see... I mean, I know I love The Flash and I love Green Lantern, but you know who I want to see? I want to see The Atom. I want to see Katana. I want to see the Hawk man and girl. I want to see... I want to see the Teen Titans. I want to see... I want to see Detective Chimp. Detective Chimp deserves his own...
I agree.
He deserves his own series.
Now, to let you know, Teen Titans do have a series.
Oh, I know they have a series, Dad.
But it's not a good one. It's just...
This is why we need more Detective Chimp.
I'll agree. You
see, I've only read one comic of his that he was in, and that was when the Dr. Fate helmet was traveling.
Oh, that was an excellent story.
Yeah, back in... I was in junior year.
I want to say it was after Infinite Crisis, but I'm not certain about that. It's when they had... Mr. Moth, I can't even think of the guy's name now, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he wore the helmet for a little while, and it was, it was funny, which is a lot of comics don't tend to have the great comedic timing like that comic did that I've seen. I mean, again, I've been living vicariously through Dad, hearing him do stuff, but this was really, really funny. It was And, there was mystery. You could see him working it out. There's none of that Batman, I know everything because I'm Batman. While there was no resolution in the comic itself, it felt like a complete self-contained story, and I want to read more Detective Chimp.
So, if you agree with us that Detective Chimp needs to have his own series, leave comments below, and we'll make it into a petition someday and send it to DC, like they'll actually listen to us, but it's worth a shot. At any rate, thanks for hanging out with us. We're coming to you a little bit late tonight, and we're actually coming after the Comics Week in Review. Next week, of course, it's the middle of Thanksgiving weekend in the United States, so we won't be coming to you on Sunday, but we'll try to come in early in the week and give you another DC Corner. So thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll catch you around.
Pull the string!